Hi guys, welcome for joining me here on another video and Happy New Year! Today is New Year's Day and I'm actually home for the first time in ever during the day, and I've got daylight, which is weird. I've never had daylight while I'm filming before, so I thought I'll take the opportunity to utilise some lovely natural light and film my entire fragrance collection for you, because where all my fragrances are stored, the light in the room is really bad and I've always needed daylight to do that. So obviously I'm pointing the camera where I normally would film, or my little side cabinet here, but we're not doing that today. Obviously we're going into the cupboard, hello, and we're filming into my entire collection. So where I store all my fragrances, nothing particularly posh, an old cupboard. It's actually a utility piece that my granddad left me for ages. I mean, he had it during the war, hence why it's a utility piece of furniture. It's a bookcase, which it kind of still is. I've still got some books and things, but it became taken over with fragrance. At first it was just one shelf and it became two, and you know how the story goes. So I think we're going to just dive straight in. Only four to a line, and they do have a structure, otherwise I think I'd be overwhelmed and would go crazy if they didn't. They are all in order of spring to winter, and we have different layers, levels of either niche or designer, that kind of thing, but it's a bit loose and they do kind of cross over. So starting with the top tier in the cupboard, we have a mix of niche, high-end designer and indie. And let's start at the beginning. So the first fragrance sitting right here is one of my favourite all-time fragrances, and this is Confessions of a Garden Gnome by Parfums de Marly, an Australian niche or maybe indie fragrance house. And this is one of my favourites because it's a magical fragrance to me. It's like being in a garden after the rain, where you've got lily of the valley growing, and it's just you've got ambergris, and there's like a tobacco nuance in here, but there's something incredibly magical about this fragrance for me, and there's nothing else like it that I've smelled that even comes close to being as magical. It's also my first ever niche fragrance, and the reason I ended up falling down the rabbit hole of fragrance, pretty much this is what pushed me down. So yeah, Confessions of a Garden Gnome, that's the first one. Sitting behind that we have a lineup of the Dior Privé, starting with Lucky. This is a lily of the valley, watery green, easy fragrance to wear. I often pair it with this one because of the lily of the valley pairing here. It kind of both enhance the other one. Really fresh, pretty. Next is the Col Noir, a very pretty, watery, fruity, sweet rose fragrance. It is very pretty, it's very easy to wear, not the best lasting power, but if you like a watery rose that is elegant and very beautiful, the Col Noir is your one. Very gorgeous. Holy Peony, a very similar style of scent to the Col Noir, but the focus here is on the peony. Watery peony, pretty. I get more compliments with this one than with the Col Noir. I think it just has a little bit more projection, a little bit more of a boldness in the flower, but both very pretty. And then we have the Gigantor, which is Dior Amour. Just want to be careful here. And Dior Amour is another very simple, watery floral. Focuses on iris, jasmine, and powdery notes. Very simple, quite ethereal. Not overly powdery, more like fizzy, slightly green iris fragrance. Very pretty. And in the front here we have three from the house of Nicolai. Now Nicolai I find very pleasant. They're all very easy to wear, understated but beautifully blended fragrances. I've got Fig Tea, which is it's not got fig in it, but it's a very fresh tea. It has osmanthus, such an easy, non-offensive, fresh fragrance if you like your tea. Angela's Pear, I didn't like at first. It wasn't a love at first sniff, but it really grew on me, this one. It's quite a dry pear, quite a musky dry pear. I really enjoy that. I find it quite addictive. There's a quality in there I really enjoy, but I can't remember all the notes. But it's lovely. And we have Violet in Love, which as you can see is probably the most worn of the three, and that is a very easy violet, fruity, sweet, lipsticky. Has a little touch of a coriander note in here, bringing it a bit of an unusualness, a bit of edge. So that is a really pleasant, again, easy wearing, slightly unusual fragrance there. Moving along to the House of Luban, I have two from Luban. Beautiful bottles, stunning bottles. I mean, you can see how unusual they are. Sort of elegant and modern at the same time. Lovely in the hand, you know, they feel beautiful. I've read and heard it has a similar personality to Shalimar, only less musky, less vintage smelling. This is much more of a bright, it's luminous. I'd call it a luminous lemon, yeah, like an aromatic citrus. Very, very, very unusual, very classy. It does have an animalic tone, which really it needs to stop it being just another fresh scent. I love this on an autumn day. That's when it really does shine. So behind Kismet, we have one called Grisette. It's called Grisette. Now this is a very watery, fresh, fruity rose. I'd call this quite luminous too. It has a lumosity from note of grapefruit, which I do really love with rose. But it's so weak. It's such a weak projection. There's virtually no complexity to it, and it disappears after about an hour. But it's such a pretty scent. I mean, this is what you want to call a blind buy worthy fragrance because it's so inoffensive. But it's more like a body spray. It really doesn't last. But I got those actually quite cheap from eBay, so I'm happy with both of those either way. Now moving on to the house of Parfums de Marly, all looking rather beautiful against their boxes. And I've kept them presented on their little podium sort of box stands just because I think they're worthy of that. They do look so pretty in there. So starting with one of my favourites, or my favourite from the house, which is Delina, the original Delina. So of course Delina is our very opulent, plush, rather velvety rose and peony fragrance with brightness, rhubarb and lychee. It's a very girly pink kind of fragrance. It's very wedding appropriate, very romantic. I call it a happy ever after in a bottle because that's what it is. It's one I would wear if I was getting married for sure, or just going to any wedding really. I think it's absolutely perfect for a wedding if you like pink florals. It's just stunning. I love that one. Moving on, we have Delina Exclusive, which is the more powdery, slightly more powdery, slightly more fluffy sister of Delina. There's no rhubarb. You've got that note missing, so there's none of that sharpness, the tartness in the beginning. You've got a touch of oud, which is not that noticeable, but it gives it a bit more lasting power. And there's pear instead of peony, I believe, in this one as well. So it's a slightly different take, and both worthy, both for sort of more different occasions, day wear, night, evening wear, just slightly, plus both enhance the other. When I wear them together. Moving on, we have Cassili. Come round, a bit more light. These are so beautiful, these bottles, aren't they? That beautiful peachy, soft creamy peach. So Cassili is a frangipani, plum and tonka fragrance, velvety like the others, but has more of an exotic feel to it. Very much a sort of fuzzy peach nuance through all of the notes. One I enjoy wearing. It's a tad juvenile perhaps compared to the others, but it's such an easy, happy little fragrance, and I do really enjoy it. Moving on, we have Meliora from Parfums de Marly, and this is what I would consider more like an autumn berry floral. Still has that sort of creamy, opulent feel to it, and I really do enjoy this one. It has red berries, there's cassis, blackberry, vanilla, there's rose in here as well, but it has a beautiful creaminess as well as maintaining this rather fresh brambleberry mix. It's just really elegant, really pretty, and another of my favourites. The last on this line from Parfums de Marly, we have Athalia, and that's one of my more recent ones from Parfums de Marly. Now Athalia is an iris fragrance. It's iris, orange blossom, and I can't remember the other notes, but it's a very simple fragrance. It's not a typically powdery iris. It does have a maturity, it does have a bit of that vintage style, but in a modern way. Like it's got that vintage I won't say old lady. There's a maturity to it. It's quite a executive maturity to it, but it does have, I think, is it benzoin in there, giving it a bit of sweetness and a bit more of a modern freshness. It's quite a dewy fragrance. Like I say, it's not a dry iris. It's quite a dewy fragrance. It's very, it's quite elegant. It's quite serious. It's one you'd wear in a sort of serious setting, and I often wear it when it's raining. It reminds me of the rain. And yeah, another beautiful one from Parfums de Marly. So that is Athalia. Going back to the lineup here in the front, we start off with Blue Lotus, one that I'm really enjoying right now, from the house of Thione Rainfield Natural Parfums. Stunning fragrances from this house. Thione is like a sorcerer, or just a fabulous perfumer who knows how to create eternal complexity and depth and a bit of magic in her fragrances. They really do paint a picture, and they just keep on going and telling a story. And Blue Lotus is actually a rather luminous, fresh green lotus. So it's a white floral, focusing obviously on the blue lotus. It's very clean. It has a slightly soapy feel, but it has this effervescent quality, which makes me think of a bubbling waterfall or something. But it's beautiful, and it really comes alive, I think, in this cold weather as well. It has this, it sort of captures the crisp winter coldness somehow. So that is Blue Lotus. We have the very stunning Tobacco Rose from the House of Papillon Artisan Perfumes. So the House of Papillon is here in the UK, specifically at the New Forest, a really beautiful area. Very green and very lush, and it's run by the very gorgeous Liz Moores, and she's just absolutely amazing. Beautiful ethos on wildlife and animals, which I love, and she's got a beautiful range of fragrances. And the one I fell in love with is Tobacco Rose. There's moss, I think there's a hay accord, maybe I got that wrong. Is there a hay absolute, something like that? Makes it like a, you know, that gives it that sort of dry hay but with a wet moss. So you've got this tobacco nuance happening, and you've got this beautiful rose in here, which is sweetened up very slightly with honey. Very organic qualities in here, and it's a very dry rose, but it has, like I said, the natural sweetness from honey. So it's just very unusual, very beautiful, and one I enjoy wearing more in the evenings. I think it's a tad sexy as well. Coming on to the next one, we have another from the House of Tioni Rainfield Natural Perfumes. This is Tafe Rose. This was my Christmas present I just received by my husband on Christmas Day. This is a very dark rose fragrance. Picture this dark chocolate brown rose where each petal has got a different shade of something deep and chocolatey, and each one smells slightly different, again with these complexities from this house. This is what I picture. And there's no patchouli in here, but it's a very sort of deep patchouli-esque scent, which hasn't got that horrible sharpness from patchouli. Obviously it's not patchouli, but I get that nuance. It's quite chocolatey as well, but it's got Mysore sandalwood, which is a stunning note of sandalwood, and you get this sort of roasted deep marzipan sort of scent. So it is very dark, it's very opulent, very rich, and just absolutely beautiful, and one I'm really enjoying at the moment because it is cold outside and it's not lovely for the cold weather. Next, another indie brand, which is Francesca Bianchi. Very beautiful range of fragrances from Francesca, and they're all very animalic and very complex. Again, very unusual. This is the one that I'd like the most. This is Under My Skin. The notes are endless in here. I can't even remember one of them, so I'm sorry about that. Lots, but there are some animalics. But when you, to my nose, this is like raw cookie bread dough with a touch of flat coke and ginger and spices. That's what it smells like to me, but very addictive. It's got a sort of moist dough. Yeah, like wet dough, but with lots of spice, and then it's covered in Coca-Cola as well. That's kind of what I get from it. But again, it's just unusual. It's a little bit of art, and I really enjoy that one. Moving on to probably probably my favourite fragrance. I've got to be honest, it is. There's something so special about this one to me. It's like my soulmate of a fragrance. So it's by the House of Renier, and it is Black Rain. I've mentioned this so many times. It's a very sharp leather with relaxing chamomile. We've got rose and violet in the mid, which is the part that I really enjoy. And you've got an addictive base of ambergris in here. It's very complex. It's very changeable. I need to get it back up because it is discontinued. All year round, stunner. Love it. Okay, so moving on, we have a line of MFKs, Maison Francis Kurkdjian, and also at the back there we have 4 Tom Ford private blends. So let's start at the front. This is L'Eau à la Rose, a very watery pink petal pink rose, light, airy, weightless. It's a kind of flutter of pink petals of roses with a bit of a grapefruit brightness. It's incredibly light, very weak projector, but clean and just easy if you love your roses. Secondly, we have Gentle Fluidity Gold, and they're so fingerprinty, aren't they? This is a woody vanilla, beautiful woody vanilla. It's very sparkling. It's like a champagne with a hint of this juniper, which smells a little bit like, I've said blackcurrant before, and I've said blackberry, and I've said blueberry. I think it's probably more like blueberry. Imagine just a tiny little bite of a blueberry muffin, but it's a light. It's not like a full sugar. It's a low sugar, low fat, light, airy bite of blueberry muffin with lots of whipped cream that's also quite light and airy, and a big glass of champagne, but gentle, fluidy, and gold. It is fluid. It's very light, but it's so elegant. It's so elegant. Yeah, and stunning one from MFK. Probably my favourite of the four is Oud Satin Mood because of that big amount of velvety rose, plush dark rose, sweet velvety rose with the powdery violet, a very rich oud which comes off slightly medicinal, but it is tempered with sweetness and this powdery quality, and also benzoin. I think is it benzoin or bergamot, which is giving it it needs that sweetness from that and that brightness. Very velvety, it's very rich, and it is a very much my winter evening out. Oh my god, look at the fingerprints, it's just awful. Moving on quickly, we have Baccarat Rouge 540 X Straight, which has been very much my Christmas scent this year. It's very festive smelling. It has spices and sugars. It's got that burnt candy sugar sort of style, like candy floss style, but it's also very spicy somehow. It's got saffron, I believe. You've got almonds in here, giving it a slightly caramelized nut sort of thing, and then you've got ambergris, so you've got saltiness from the ambergris. It's just a beautiful mix of sweet, spicy, and sugar, and it's stunning. Moving on to the back, we go for the Tom Fords. I have tried to keep everything in order. I've actually got each Tom Ford lined up with the MFK in a way I feel like they pair up. So we've got two reds, we've got two roses, we have the vanilla, and the last two don't pair up, but they're the odd ones. So of course, Tom Ford private line, starting with fucking fabulous. It is a rich, creamy tonka, sage, and almond fragrance. I always think of like an aromatic white chocolate when I smell this. It's quite an executive kind of fragrance, really. Quite professional smelling, very creamy. And the sage just makes it interesting and aromatic. And it's not one I've actually pulled for much this year, but it is a really beautiful one, so I enjoy that. And of course, we have Vanille Fatale, which is an antiqued sort of vanilla. I once referred to it as being a custard stain on Gandalf's cloak, and I'm going to stick with that. I think that summarises it pretty well. It's got a little bit of a smokiness in here from tobacco as well. So that is a lovely vanilla if you like a more edgy, dark style vanilla. And here we have, of course, Noir de Noir, which is quite notorious from Tom Ford. It is a gothic rose. It has it's a woodiness in here. I think there's a touch of oud in here actually. You've got a bit of a red wine thing, which makes it a little bit sharp, a little bit bitter, but it's also quite earthy from truffle and what else is in here? A lot of patchouli. It's quite a dark rose with an earthiness to it. It's not one I love, but if I'm in the mood for it, then I really enjoy it. And then the Lost Cherry is, of course, a cherry fragrance, and it's more of an almond one on me. It goes much more almondy, not the best lasting power, but it is sweet. It's quite fun, I suppose. This is actually beautiful, layered with Fève Delicious from Dior, which we'll get to in a minute. But that one layers really well with that one. Let's just move these back so they are in colour and group order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on to level 2, where we're going to find mostly designer. There's a few niche there, and also some high-end designer. So starting with, of course, the beginning, 2 from Jo Malone, and actually we have 2 from Viktor and Rolf, the Magic Collection there at the back. So starting with the English Oak and Hazelnut. Very sharp, very astringent, a bit like a cologne, like a splash on. That's what it reminds me of. Imagine the scent of a pickled hazelnut. My cats are really on one. Hang on. Because it's quite sharp, it's nice for the cold weather. I usually pull for this probably from about now. I did pull for it a little bit in the autumn, but it's more, I think, sort of like an end of winter, beginning of spring scent for me anyway. At the back or behind, we have Wild Blueberry. And this it's a very fresh, aquatic sort of style of fragrance, actually. It has a slight saltiness to it. And a hint of floral, maybe. I mean, what the bluebell doesn't really, it's not something you can pick and use. It's actually an accord that's been made up from a different flower. I wouldn't call it a floral, though. It does smell like a fresh, like I say, a little bit aquatic-y, slightly salty. Yeah, it's nice for when it's warm weather, hot weather. It's a very fresh one to wear. So we have Lavender Illusion from the Viktor and Rolf Magic Collection. And this is, I'm trying to remember what this smells like, actually. It is lavendery, but it's also, I think, blackberry, from what I can remember. It's more like a blackberry lavender mixture. But it is nice if you like a sort of touch of blackberry. It's got like a watery element to it as well. Like a fresh one, quite nice, quite pleasant. At the back, it's actually really beautiful rose, more cherry. Dancing Roses. It's like a boozy, brandy cherry. I can't remember the other notes in here, but it's a very syrupy, sweet thick fragrance, very smooth, very beautiful. I don't wear this enough, and I really should. I think I'm saving it because I know this is discontinued, or I think it's discontinued now. It's hard to get hold of, but it isn't. It's probably the standout. I think it is the standout one from this particular collection. So that is a stunning rose and cherry fragrance. Dancing Rose is there. Next line we have colour coordination, and these are all my sort of spring summer florals, if you like. So starting with a niche brand, really, Destita, beautiful niche brand. This is Spend Iris, and this is a violet and iris blend, very beautiful. It has a rich carrot seed. Is it carrot seed? There's amber green here. It's got a very rich base, thick iris or orris, quite an organic smelling one. There's no nothing artificial, if you like, in it. It all smells very organic, very natural, and very pretty. Behind that we have Eclat d'Apage by Lanvin, which is a wisteria. It's wisteria, lilac and tea. It's a tea. And it is said to be quite close smelling to Light Blue from Dolce & Gabbana, which I'm not too familiar with Light Blue, but it is, let me just sniff it, hang on. Yes, it does. It smells cold. It's a cold floral with a bit of a lovely freshness to it from the tea, and it just smells like a cold. It's so refreshing. It's beautiful. It's one of my favourite bottles. I love this little ball of lilac juice. Anyway, that is one of my favourites to wear when it gets warm. Behind that we have Dolce & Gabbana. This is Peony, and this is one I reached for a lot actually at the beginning of the year. Another fresh floral. It's got some fruits in there. It's a very sweet floral. It does smell a bit synthetic compared to a lot of them, but it's very easy. Again, it's clean. It's a nice clean sweet floral to wear, and quite inexpensive, this one as well. And then behind that we have Stella McCartney Bluebell Pop, and this has got an interesting note of tomato leaf, which does notice and gives this one a little bit of a difference, a bit of edge. But again, it's just a really sweet, pleasant, soft bluebell style floral with that unusual edge from tomato leaf. So another lovely fresh one to wear for the spring or summer. So those are my sort of spring summer florals. Next we have our spring summer fruits. I don't have many fruit fragrances. I prefer florals, but this is the ones that I do think of as fruity. Starting off with Proxima. This is obviously the beautiful indie brand from Peter Carter, and obviously he is a fragrance reviewer here on YouTube, and this is his fragrance house called Centauri, and Proxima is the one that I personally fell in love with, and it's just a very tropical fruity scent. I believe there's strawberry and grapefruit in here, but this to me smells like a pink fuzzy peach. It's a lovely fuzzy succulence to this, to the fruit. What is like an imaginary fruit for me, like a made up fruit. Imagine a pink fuzzy peach, but inside it's not exactly watery juicy, it's more succulent and dense. That's kind of how this smells to me. But it's a lot of a lovely fresh airiness around it, and a creaminess, and I don't know, this is very complex. It's incredibly beautiful, and a real compliment getter for me anyway. My husband loves this one, it's on me. Behind this one we have Aqua Allegoria range of Guerlain. This is on Orange Soleil, and I find this to be one of the most beautiful orange style fragrances I've smelt so far. It's all the best parts of orange. It's like the creaminess, the sweetness, the tanginess, the juiciness, all in one bottle. There's some florals in here keeping it soft and pretty. But this is a beautiful, beautiful orange, and this is the only one I've liked. Behind that we have a fig based fragrance from Acqua di Parma, and this one is Fico di Amalfi, and it is the most vibrant, luminous fig, like fizzy fig I've ever smelt. Doesn't last long on me at all. One of the most perfect fragrances for a heat wave, let's say, because it's just so refreshing and beautiful. So that's Fico di Amalfi. Do you know, I'm getting so tired. This is tiring work. So next we have one from Mugler, and this is the ever polarizing style of fragrance from him. This is Womanity, and this is an incredibly salty, dry fig fragrance. Not for everyone. It's got a mineral-like quality to it. The sweetness seems to balance with the saltiness, and I really enjoy this one, obviously. Didn't pour for it much this year for some reason, but I do really enjoy it, and hopefully I'll wear it more next year. I love the bottle as well. It's so alien. It's beautiful. Next we have a line of niche and indie, starting with one of my more recent favourites actually, and this is created by Thomas O'Brien from the channel Ouch 110. Interesting, I've never realised before I've got two next to each other here, both created by two completely different fragrance channels here on YouTube, both extremely talented. And this one is Thomas O'Brien from the channel Ouch 110, and this is Fawn. This is nothing like anything I've got. I'm not a white floral lover particularly, and I certainly am not a fan of aldehydes, and it has both of that in here. But there is the composition is incredibly beautiful for me, because it makes me think of being outdoors on a meadow and just running around in grasses and hay and flowers, and it's just, that's what it does for me. And I love a fragrance that can transport you somewhere, and I love that quality in here. And the florals are just, it's a lotus actually, it's very clean. I think there's also jasmine in here. It's very clean, slightly soapy but not heavy, but it's just balanced out with all these other beautiful is English herbs and tobacco and things like that. Is a really beautiful one from Thomas. Behind Fawn, we have three from Orm and Jane, starting with this one is Frangipani. Of course it is Frangipani. There's also, I believe there's lime and lime blossom in here. Oh my god, it's absolutely stunning. It reminds me of honeysuckle, and there's something almondy, some sort of almond quality in here as well. The lime is so fresh, it's beautiful, but it's soft, it's not sharp or anything. And then the honeysuckle, I know there's honeysuckle in here, but there's something about it that's tropical honeysuckle. We've got tropical frangipani, and there's something almond-like. I don't know, love it. I just always loved this one. Straight away, as soon as I first smelled it, I absolutely loved it. Next we have Privé, very aromatic, spicy fragrance, but spicy in the more softer, calming way, as opposed to like chili. It's very calming. It reminds me of a rice pudding that's been cooking with lots of nutmeg, and it's in the air and it's breezy and it's just beautiful. And that's what I always think of when I smell Privé, this nutmeg aromatic creamy loveliness. And at the back here we have a much larger one, 250ml. This is Tafe Rose, and this one obviously is a rose fragrance. It's sort of a warm fragrance without it being heavy. There's dates, the fruit of dates in here, so it's a nice rich date fruit but not heavy. There's a slight plasticky edge to the rose. I mean, I think Tafe roses do have that slightly different style of scent, but it has sweetness, it has that bit of depth, it has that freshness. It's slightly unusual, very easy wearing, and I do really enjoy that one as well. So those are the Orm and Janes and Fawn. So three more niche here. We have one from Byredo. This is Bow D'Afrique, and this one, to me, the smell doesn't represent the notes in here at all. This is essentially a vetiver fragrance. So vetiver should be quite dry and grassy, shouldn't it, I guess? But in here, to me, I get this mango and banana smoothie with by that cardamom. There's definitely cardamom in here, but it brings this slightly dry desert scent that's aromatic and very creamy. The African marigold flower, isn't it? That's what this is based around as well. And it brings this, for me, this very unusual buttery ochre yellow colour in the scent. Like, that's the colour I see when I smell it. But very unusual and lovely for a summer's day, that one. Next we have two from Sylvain Delacote. First one is Virgile, my favourite from the entire house. This is such a beautiful aromatic vanilla. It has herbs like rosemary and sage in here. And I get a very strong, I think, I thought there was leather in here, but reading back at the notes, there actually isn't. But it's very leathery. There's an unusual leather quality riding through this creamy vanilla and herbs. And it's stunning, it's unusual, and it's incredibly uplifting and peaceful at the same time. And at the back we have another from Sylvain Delacote. This is Smeraldo from the Musks line. This is an Angelica fragrance. This is essentially Angelica with musks, and it's very watery, very clean. It's a bit like smelling leaves and stems in water, but much more delicate and much more calming. It's a very calming, clean, uplifting fragrance. So that is Smeraldo. This one is Flora Botanica by Balenciaga. It's a rose fragrance, but it's more green than anything. It's very watery, but it's very strong in the soapy quality, and there's a bit of a mint sharpness, which slightly does give me a headache. There's also cannabis apparently in here, which I think is probably adding to my headaches when I wear this. But I still love it. I don't want to get rid of it. It's a very unique fragrance. It's ever so bright and clean, but and there's a lot of sweetness in it, but I just have trouble wearing it. So that one's kind of reserved behind the panel a little bit. Cloud was my go-to for so long. Last year, my biggest compliment getter, and I still do love this one, but I don't reach for it much because I've got one now that's kind of replaced a similar sort of fragrance scent. Very creamy, lavender, coconut. There's praline in here. It's very, very sweet, but slightly unusual from the lavender. I still love it, and I won't get rid of it. Hi guys, I'm back on a new day. I had to stop filming because I lost light and I had to be somewhere. So we're back filming on the next day, and unfortunately I have lost natural light now. So let's carry on from when we left off. We were on the Miscellaneous line here, and I got as far as Crystal Noir from Versace. Beautiful one for summer's evening. This one actually is more about the coconut and about a white floral of gardenia and cardamom. And what I love about this is actually the cardamom, the amount of cardamom, incredibly addictive. And it is such a beautiful fragrance from Versace. So that is Crystal Noir. Probably haven't seen before unless you know Marks and Spencer's, which is a store we have here in the UK. And they do have their own fragrances. And this is Opulence Oud, slightly fruity oud. I don't wear this very often. It's actually a nice one just to layer if you want to add a little bit of extra sort of sparkle and a little bit of that oud. So I do use it, as you can see, just not very often. Actually a really beautiful heavy glass bottle. That is Opulence Oud, and that is by Marks and Spencer. So this next line of 4 fragrances are all Montal or Mancera, which of course are sister companies. This first little one at the front here is Sweet Vanilla by Montal. Imagine a vanilla and apricot sherbet sweet, kind of effervescent on your tongue. You know how Parma violets are quite chalky, but they kind of fizz on your tongue? That is what the scent is like, only it's vanilla and apricot. The apricot isn't very strong, but it does give a little bit of a fruity jamminess. Makes it a bit warmer and a bit fluffier somehow. Really, really sweet, sort of fizzy vanilla and apricot style of fragrance. So that is Sweet Vanilla. Directly behind Sweet Vanilla we have Roses Vanille, and this is by Mancera. Super sugary, sweet rose and vanilla fragrance. Smells to me like a jammy dodger. I've said it so many times, I know, but it's something biscuity about the DNA in here. Warm and biscuity. That is Roses Vanille. Super, super, super sweet. Very addictive fragrance, that one. Another from Mancera here is Roses and Chocolate. This one is not what you expect it to be. Roses and Chocolate, it's not like a gourmand at all, in my opinion. It's actually quite a clean, soapy fragrance. But there is an aspect of it being also like a powdered chocolate. I think it's more like milk chocolate, but the note actually is dark chocolate. I find this really unusual. Yeah, it's just happy, fun little fragrance. Roses and Chocolate. And then behind Roses and Chocolate, we have Intense Cafe from Montal. Creamy and very lovely hit of coffee in the opening. It's equally as delicious and addictive as Roses Vanille. I find the rose content in this to be fuller and more pronounced than that of Roses Vanille. So I do enjoy the rose far more in this one, but they're both equally addictive and equally beautiful. So that is that line. Next we have a row of designer fragrances here, and sitting right here at the front has become my new go-to fragrance. Always wondered about my Burberry Black. This is my Burberry Black, sorry, from Burberry. I always had my eye on it and never really got around to trying it. And I love it. It's not the sort of thing I'd normally go for. It's basically a warm, fuzzy peach, ambery, fluffy, musky scent. Not my kind of thing normally. It's the sort of thing you can imagine people wearing in an office. It's a very ladylike but kind of warm, fluffy style scent. I love the fuzzy peach content in here. It's very soft, yeah, fluffy, cozy and very sweet. Yeah, loving my Burberry. Secondly, behind that we have Hugo Boss Scent Private Accord. So this is like this is a chocolate and mandarin fragrance. It's very synthetic smelling. It's a very powdery chocolate. The mandarin is more pronounced in the opening. It's still a sort of floral mix of perfume. Very slightly cozy, very soft. I was looking to sell this one because I didn't reach for it for quite some time, and then suddenly I started craving it again. So it is rescued for now. We have the very iconic. It's iconic for me because 2 years ago you wouldn't have seen any of these bottles. There would have just been Stella and a couple of others that I used to wear. Stella was really the beginning of me falling in love with rose fragrances. I mean, it was the first fragrance that was rose pronounced. Full rose that had warmth from amber, and there was a brightness from mandarin. There's also peony in here. Since the reformulation, the rose isn't as full as it used to be. It's sort of taken a bit of a back seat in this fragrance, and the mandarin seems to have come forward more. So it's kind of more of a fresh rose than what it used to be, which was more velvety evening rose. So I don't wear this one as much as I used to. I think I'll always love it, and it's just too special not to have in my collection. So that is Stella Eau de Parfum. We have Jean Paul Gaultier La Belle. And this is what I consider my autumn pear. The only one I have from Jean Paul Gaultier. It's the only one I really love from Jean Paul Gaultier. The pear is so warm and delicious. The vanilla in here is very custardy. There's an intoxicatingly sweet Jean Paul Gaultier perfume just running all the way through it and pulling everything together. So that is the very, very delicious La Belle from Jean Paul Gaultier. So this next row is the category of sort of high-end designer. So the first three are Lancome, the Maison Lancome line. The first being Oud Bouquet. As you can see, this is the older style of bottle. These are the sort of newer styles. But Oud Bouquet, I think it's probably the most popular of the Maison Lancome line. Rose Oud, which is becoming very increasingly popular. This is very sweet. You get this beautiful, rich decadentness, is that a word? From praline. Velvety, powdery quality. Very sweet rose. There's also saffron in here, giving it a lovely spicy edge. And you've got the oud, which is not overly strong. It just gives it that slightly Eastern style. And if I even try and sniff this now, all I'll be able to smell the rest of the evening is Oud Bouquet, because it just seems to grab hold of everything it touches, basically. It's incredibly strong, absolutely stunning. So behind Oud Bouquet, we have Rose's Berberanza, one of my absolute favourite rose fragrances in my entire collection, because it is so sweet. It's a gourmand rose. It's incredibly sweet. When I first smelt this, I didn't care for it. The note of pistachio just made it too unusual, a little bit sour. Now I've grown to love it, and I love it because of the unique fragrance that it is. When you wear this, the projection is so beautiful. It's a sweet rose, but it has like a boozy feel from rum, and it has these lovely fruity notes, syrupy fruity notes, but the pistachio just makes it into something a little bit more unique. I don't think I've ever actually worn this and not got a compliment. So it is a stunner. That's Rose's Berberanza, and again from the same line we have Jasmine's Marzipan. And no, this smells nothing like marzipan, which is a real shame, but I appreciate for what it is, which is a jasmine dominant fragrance. A slightly soft almond touch. It is a very clean, slightly soapy jasmine without any of the indoles that give you a headache or give me a headache. It's almost silky. It's like a silky, soapy, very soft jasmine with a sort of soft nuttiness, soft woodiness, making it smell almost innocent, you know. And there's something very nostalgic for me in this scent, but I haven't put my finger on what it is yet. That is Jasmine's Marzipan. And then hiding at the back here, we have one from Elisab, and it's their private range, the Essences. And this is Elisab's Essence #1 Rose. Now, I was lucky enough to pick this up on eBay. It is discontinued now. It smells like Turkish Delight. It smells like sugary dust you get on Turkish Delight. It smells like that. It's incredibly sweet. It's also like talcum powder to me. I always say that, but if you can imagine both lovely rose-scented talcum powder along with Turkish Delight mixed together, it's playful, it's very sweet, very cozy as well, and just a really pretty rose fragrance. So that is Elisab Essence #1 Rose. So these next four are like an autumn lineup, I guess. There's 3 high-end designer and 1 luxury indie or niche, if you like. So first up is from the house of Christian Dior, Maison Dior, and it is Fève Delicious, another very, very popular fragrance from the house of Dior. Fève Delicious is French for delicious bean, and they're focusing on the tonka bean, of course. You've also got cherry in here, beautiful pure tonka. I can imagine eating a marzipan-y vanilla with a glass of white wine. There's a weird combination of sort of very sweet and smooth with a little bit of a sourness, and that's what I get from Fève Delicious. It's very elegant. It's a very elegant fragrance. It smells very expensive, and there's a slight powdery aspect to it, which I think is the tonka, bringing a very soft powdery feel. But that is a very beautiful fragrance. Next we have Whispers in the Library from the house of Maison Margiela. And this is their replica, which replicates the smell of the library, which is debatable. I think people have a lot of opinions on what this actually does smell like. But honestly, what this really is a very woody vanilla. It's a very peppery scent, and I love that. I love how peppery it is. And I find that the woody aspect smells quite deep, almost like an ebony wood, like very, very deep and very smooth. So if you like your woody vanillas, this is definitely one to check out. And I really enjoy this one in the winter time, or autumn even, autumn and winter really. Next, from the house of L'Orchestre Parfums, we have Rose Trombone. The Rose Trombone is a very woody rose. It's quite a boozy woody rose. And I find it too, this is the one that I said smells red. It's got quite a sharp berry sweetness. I think it's rum or brandy. I think it's rum in here. And it reminds me of waxed wood somehow, like a really polished or waxed wood. There's something like that in here. Lovely for the autumn. This is definitely, for me, this is an autumn rose. So that is Rose Trombone. And then at the back we have Van Cleef and Arpels. This one is Rose Rouge. Rose Rouge I only bought about a month ago, and I have been really enjoying it, as you can see. It opens up so jammy, the rose. It reminds me a bit of Dancing Roses. It has that very sweet, jammy, thick rose. Raspberry, which really does sweeten the rose. And you've got a lot of patchouli in here, actually, which is not something I really usually enjoy, but it's doing its job. It does make it last a lot longer. It gives it that kind of earthy quality. And that earthy quality sort of pulls the rose into more of a velvety dry down. Very easy to reach for. So that is Rose Rouge by Van Cleef & Arpels. So this final row, I guess, indicates a bit of a winter lineup. I just love how incredibly eye-catching and artistic and kind of epic this wintry blue bottle looks. So Blue Lazuli is, of course, by Armani Privé, and that is their private line. Blue Lazuli is an incredibly soft tobacco and tea scent with spices and woods. It's so soft. It's almost like a finely milled powder. And the cardamom, I think, is just bringing this beautiful quality to it. And it's, although it's soft and powdery, it's actually complex. It smells incredibly expensive. It is very expensive. Absolutely adore Blue Lazuli. So that is that one. Next, we have Terry Mugler, which is their Angel EDT. It is reminiscent of the original patchouli and praline, but it's so much softer, and it has a crisp green apple scent running through it. So it's like it reminds me of a toffee apple. It's incredibly sweet, but it's kind of fluffy. It's like a fluffy blue, light blue hug, if you like, but with a sort of toffee apple feel to it as well. And I do think of it as a sort of very wintry, because it's cozy, it's sweet, and it is a wintry scent to me. So that is Angel EDT. Behind that, we come to the House of Guerlain, and this is from their Art and Matière line. When it comes to Guerlain, I'm never sure whether to say if it's niche or designer. I guess it's a niche house that went designer. Is that fair to say? So first up, we have Queer Beluga, and this is, although there's no leather actually in here, it's essentially a leather and vanilla fragrance. Very delicate, very unusual, but also very simple. It's like, if you can imagine vanilla ice cream running down a suede bag, but not too sweet, and it's more suede heavy. None of the notes really give you an idea of how this is going to smell. You have to try this. It's incredibly soft and elegant, unusual, and I always seem to get a compliment when I wear this one. And behind that, from the same line, we have Rose... Oh, I dropped it. Rose Barbare. So this obviously is essentially a rose fragrance. It's an aldehyde and honey rose, which from the sound of that sounds like something I wouldn't even enjoy, but I kind of do, because the rose is incredibly beautiful. It's a very soft marshmallowy rose. It is sweetened slightly with honey, although it isn't a sweet fragrance at all. The aldehydes give it that slight dry, sort of waxy feel. It does seem a tad mature, but again, from this house, incredibly elegant, incredibly beautifully blended. So that is everything on the second tier. Coming down to the third tier, let's just start at the side here. So we have two from 4160 Tuesdays. The first one is called Burnt Cedar Rainbow Doves. This is a very unusual fragrance, very resinous, smoky kind of a scent, like resins and things like that. It reminds me of a carpenter and engineer's workshop. And you've got a sort of sugared almond thing. It gives it a bit of sweetness, but more in a thick, oily scent. It's a very unusual one. I do love it. It has sentimental value. Next to it, we have Cloud's Illusion. And this is a very beautiful lemony iris fragrance. It does remind me of a fluffy cloud with the sun coming up from behind it. So that lovely lemony citrus in here is very soft and quite powdery, and it complements this sort of strong, thick orris in this fragrance. It just makes me think of a beautiful cloud in a blue sky with the sunshine coming up behind it. Next we have a decant from Roger Dove, and this one is Midsummer Night's Dream. This is the only Roger Dove fragrance that I have in my collection. I'm not going to take it out because I keep dropping it. It's a very sharp, thick, resinous lemon and ginger fragrance, nice to reach for on occasion. At the back here we have all my Lolita lemon pickers. So there we go, all the beautiful whimsical looking apples. So the first one is this sort of more evil looking poison bottle here. This is Eau de Menu, and this is much more sort of woody licorice. It's a very deep, almost deep, thick black treacle smelling fragrance, but woody and slightly musky. Next is the classic Eau de Parfum. It's that mix of licorice and violet. Been around for quite some time, this one, but it's still a cult classic and it's still very, very unique. So that is the Eau de Parfum. The Eau de Toilette is in fact my favourite one. It isn't so rich and strong as the Eau de Parfum. It has less licorice. It's more about this ivy and violet. It's a slightly fresher take, and it has this lovely pepperiness to it and a bit more of a greenness to it. And it's just ethereal and stunning and magical to me, and I absolutely love it. And the next one we have here is Fleur Defender. This is actually more of an almond style fragrance. It does still have the licorice, but there's this lovely almond. It makes it slightly more powdery. It's much softer. It has florals in here as well. Again, though, discontinued, so you can find them on eBay occasionally, but for the most part, they're quite hard to find. So then we have El de Lolita. And this is the unusual looking pebble with all these little washed up on the sea kind of gems and things. And it smells nothing like how you would expect a sort of oceanic looking thing to smell like. This is actually a bit of a gourmand style. It's quite soft, but it's a powdered chocolate, and I think it's blood orange and cinnamon. So a little bit of maybe a Christmas feel with the cinnamon and the chocolate and the orange. Almost like chocolate bread. There's a bit of that going on, but more of a powdery quality. It's more of a collector's piece, if I'm honest. Next we have this little one from Nina Ricci called Luna. I just want to take the moment to again apologise for the lighting, for the shadows, and for this shabby backdrop. So Luna is not one I really ever wear, if I'm honest. I actually love the little bottle. I kept it for the little bottle. I think it's incredibly adorable. A soft, sweet, fruity fragrance. There is praline in here. I think there's a bit of orange. It's a very sort of synthetic, sweet, soft scent. It's very sweet, almost toffee-like. Not one that I've ever really enjoyed. It's a bit underwhelming. Like I say, I just adore this little bottle. It's incredibly cute, isn't it? So I keep it really for that purpose. And then two more alongside here. So these next two I keep on this shelf because I don't really reach for them. I like to sniff them every now and again. Very sugary, sweet, orangey scent. Quite retro. But I just enjoy it. There's some white florals in here which soften it, and there's just something about it that I just really enjoy sniffing. A little sweet treat, this one. And next we have Le Bleu from Guerlain. So this is actually quite an iconic fragrance, very, very old. Having this in my collection is my ode to having something very vintage. Talcum powder handbag sort of scent, that very vintage iris and violet. Spicy vintage iris. I love sniffing it, I just don't really wear it very often, but it's there if I want it, and I like having it. I just like having it in my collection. So that's Le Bleu from Guerlain. And then back at the front here is where I display my Black Phantom coffret. See, Black Phantom is by Kilian, and it's a very beautiful, let's just open it. So here we have the bottle of Black Phantom. The actual scent here is a very thick, warming, resinous, sugary style scent. You've got coffee, caramel, and lots of rum in this one. Better idea of how the bottle actually looks. I love the artwork down the sides. I think that is so beautiful. That's the very beautiful Black Phantom. Then moving on to the right here, we have three bottles all stored together because they all look a bit fancy, don't they? So we have 100 Silent Ways from the house of Nishané, and this was my gateway to appreciating a tuberose fragrance. I never thought I'd like a tuberose fragrance, but I guess if you blend it up with some whipped fluffy light cream and then throw some peach in there from sweetness. I guess that is something I'm going to enjoy after all. 100 Silent Ways is the reason I don't actually wear Cloud so much. If you were to take Cloud and refine it, make it more elegant and make it more mature, this is how it would end up. And I like it far more because of those reasons, really. It's a very sweet, elegant, creamy tuberose. Next up here we have Oud Violet Intense by Fragrance du Bois, and I do love how bougie and fancy this bottle is. This is a very haunting, kind of mystical fragrance, really. It's quite a moody one, so it does gel well with me. It reminds me of a tree stump, a damp tree stump in a woodland somehow, and as it settles down, this scent kind of brightens up a bit, and you've got LMI, that lemony resin, occasional nuance of something violety, but more of a sort of a dark violet. Overall, it's quite a haunting, murky, but rather resinous fragrance, and I just seem to bond with it. So that is the very beautiful Oud Violet Intense by Fragrance du Bois. And last on this little line of fancy bottles here, we have one from the House of Panna London, and this one is called Marc de Champagne Truffle. It's quite a decadent little gourmand fragrance, really. It's the scent of a Marc de Champagne truffle, which are very expensive truffles, but you've got a dominant raspberry in here. It's very raspberry, and it smells exactly like a raspberry ruffle. It's very chocolatey, it's very sweet, it's very raspberry-y. It's something to treat yourself with on occasion. So that is Marc de Champagne Truffle by Panna London. And then moving on, the last bottle on this third shelf is Ojan by Parfums de Marly. It has to have the box behind it. I don't know why this is. I feel they need the box to complete the whole presentation. I've reached for this so much. It's become a signature scent through the end of autumn and throughout this winter. It's an apple strudel, but it's more like you're walking down a street and someone's window is open for some strange reason, even though it's freezing cold, and they're inside, they're baking an apple strudel, a beautiful warm apple strudel with lots of cinnamon, and it's wafting through the window, and you're getting wafts of it on the cold, crisp winter air. It's kind of clean. It's something a bit sparkling in here. It's not heavy. It's just delicious. And I also keep picking up on marzipan nuances. Perfect winter scent for me. Absolutely love Ojan. So that is the last one on that shelf. The box to the right here is a box of samples. It's just a massive, it's a beautiful box by Guerlain. So I put all my samples in there. A little box of samples here. I have lots of smaller bottles of fragrance and decants as well. I've got a couple of smaller bottles from Sylvain Delacourt just here. I've got a little bottle here from Penhaligon's, which is Luna. I've got my 30ml bottle of Elizabeth and James Amethyst Nirvana. It's not on the other shelves just because it keeps falling over, and it doesn't really, I don't notice it amongst other fragrances, so it's there so that I can see it. And I've also got two here from Tessa Williams, indie brand of Tessa Williams. Very, very lovely little fragrances. Faith and Water. That does pretty much complete my entire collection. Really hope you've enjoyed the video. I'm so sorry for the lack of light and all the shadows. Absolutely love looking at other people's full collection videos, so I figured it was time for me to give back and do my own. So there you have it. That is the entire mother load. I'm going to wrap this up because this has been exhausting, absolutely exhausting, and I'm tired out. So I'm going to leave you there. Hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, guys. Over and out.